I'm not a religious person, but after an incident at my sister's house, I am a believer in the paranormal. My sister Catherine lived in a very small, shady town in the middle of Illinois, surrounded by a cornfield. I was staying at my sister's house with her husband and 2 kids. Me and my sister are very close, and I make the trip usually once a week to visit her and her family. Our family has always been tight-knit, and we never go over a month without seeing each other. My sister's house is old and naturally creepy, just like every other house in a small town. Not that it isn't comforting at the same time. In 2009, my grandmother passed away of breast cancer that eventually spread to her lungs. Everyone was devastated, especially me and Catherine. She was our best friend. She was an amazing woman and cared for her children and grandchildren all the same. I said I would have given anything to see her healthy again. That night at Catherine's was just like any other night, playing card games in the kitchen and eating cookies my sister had made. It was getting late, and my niece was finally asleep upstairs. My nephew was in his crib in my sister's room. My nephew's video baby monitor on the edge of the table finally went quiet. We resumed our game, but something was off. I looked at the baby monitor as butterflies shot through my stomach. A no-shit white ghostly figure about the same height of me went from one side of the room toward the crib and stopped at the far side of it. It stood there and seemed to be admiring my nephew. I was frozen to my seat. Apparently my brother-in-law had noticed my focus on the monitor and looked as well. He saw the figure and freaked out, rushing upstairs. I looked towards my sister, who was confused and terrified at the same time, having no clue of the situation, facing away from the monitor. I looked back to see my brother standing over the crib, in disbelief walking back out of the room. As Tony came back downstairs, I couldn't help but feel more calm. I know who was on that screen, even if I couldn't see a face or any distinct features. My grandma had came to say hello, or maybe even goodbye, to her new great-grandson that she would have loved so much. "There's no one there," Tony said, obviously freaked out. "There was," I stated with a smile, and told them what I saw. I'll always remember that day, and all the little unexpected things that happened around the house will always let me know someone I love is always close by.
As a teenager, I was always skeptical of all those psychic shows, where the host would sit down with a random member of the public and somehow tell them about their lost loved ones and how they tried to communicate with them from the afterlife. I was a skeptic. That was until I met a distant relative of mine. This man, who I only knew as Bac Tin, I'm from Vietnam by the way, was visiting from the US and was my grandfather's cousin. He claimed to be able to see ghosts. I'm not gonna lie, I thought that he was a total nut job at first, but I was still curious to hear his stories nonetheless. So he told me a time that one of his close friends had started to feel sick being in her own home. No matter what kind of remedies she took or what doctor she went to see, she always ended up sick for long periods of time. So one day, Bac decided to visit her at her home. Immediately, he noticed that there was a strong odour, a type of rotting flesh smell, like sulphur, which only he could smell. He thought this was really weird. He walked through the house and noticed an old piano nestled in the corner of the room. He said, "Where did you buy that?" To which she replied that she brought it from a garage sale. Bac continued on into the house and walked into her kitchen. He told me that right as he entered the kitchen, on the top of a fridge sat a man. His face was silky green and it had a tinge to it. He reeked of rotting flesh. The man sat there, smiling creepily down at them, not saying a word. He just sat there like he was waiting for someone or something. Bat immediately knew that this man was somehow connected to the piano of his friend who had just fallen ill. He thought that it was the dead owner that refused to leave the piano behind. Staying silent, he quietly turned around and told his friends to immediately sell the piano and leave the house. According to Back, after leaving the house and the piano behind, the bouts of sickness left her and she never got ill again. Jokingly, I asked him why he didn't try and ask the ghost to leave. The atmosphere then tense. Back looked me right in the eye and said, "Do not ever talk to the dead." He told me that the dead lived in their own dimension, their own world. Because of that, the dead would always try and communicate with the living. They wanted a connection like a real human would with another. He said that as soon as they knew that you could see them and communicate with them, they'd latch onto you and never stop following you. After all that, I still sort of doubted all of his stories and warnings. I mean, they're just stories, right? But curiosity got the better of me. But anyway, at that moment, my grandma came down to sit and chat. After a while, my grandma left the room to grab tea and Back turned to my family to give us a strange warning. Now, my grandma had always wanted to visit Vietnam ever since she had moved here to Canada. At this time, she was 83. Back said to us that if we were ever to take her back to Vietnam, she'd have to go before her 94th birthday. Not a year later. After that, she would not be able to go. With that, Back said goodbye and left for his hotel. I never saw him again. Fast forward 11 years later, a week before my grandma's 94th birthday, I sensed something was off about her. Her cheeks were no longer pink, they were yellow in fact. Her whole face looked a deep yellow. A couple of days later, after a doctor's visit, my grandma was diagnosed with old age leukemia. Her bone marrow just decided to stop producing blood. 2 weeks later, one day exactly after her 94th birthday, my grandma passed away. Creepiest part? I received a phone call that same day from Back at his home in the US, offering his condolences for our loss. Not a single person in the family had told anyone about her death. He already knew. To this day, I often find myself thinking about the things he's told me. I would be lying if I told you I didn't already believe some of it. I sometimes imagine the dead just staring at me while I'm alone in my home, waiting patiently for you to give them a sign and for you to speak to them. My question for you is, if you could speak to Back about your future or the loved ones, what would you ask him? I know I wouldn't.